Welcome everyone to the TIPS Fall Fundraiser Luncheon, Empowering Resilient Leaders. My name is Sylvia and I'm really excited to be your host as I take you through this virtual program. And speaking of virtual, I was actually an intern with TIPS with the Atlantic Street Center, in which I helped tutor and mentor disadvantaged youth who come from similar backgrounds as my own. And while I did work as an educator, I was also tackling the educational inequities that I see within my own community. And yes, this may seem a little bit ambitious at first, but I've come to realize that myself and all of my interns have that same kind of passion when it comes to tackling these goals in our community. Our hope is that you will see how important it is to continue to support teens serving our communities. If you would like to support teens in public service, you can use the donation link in the video description box below. We will also be using the chat feature to share links and more information about how you can get involved with teens in public service. So if you have a lunch or a snack, grab it and feel free to sit back and listen as we hear from board members, the TIPS Executive Director, and alumni on how you can continue to support us serving our community. To begin our program, I would like to introduce Joe Brotherton, the Chair of the Board of Directors of TIPS, who will be giving us a very warm welcome.
Welcome everyone and hello. My name is Joe Brotherton, and I am proud to be the chairman of the Board of Directors of Teens in Public Service. TIPS is just plain one of my favorite charities in the Northwest or perhaps anywhere. Why? It's just a really good idea. It works really well. I've been asking a number of TIPS constituents over the last couple of days to give me one word which they think describes TIPS. One that came up repeatedly was impactive. The impact that we have on the charities we serve, the impact we have on the interns, and the impact ultimately on the recipients of those charities' charitable work. Another word that is raised often is leverage. The idea is that when you support a TIPS intern, you not only create an opportunity for this bright young person to produce more than they cost and really help the charity they serve this year, but we change this young future leader's life. We change their view of the world, and they continue to give back for years to come. We have lots of evidence of that in our alumni. 2020, a whole new set of adjectives apply to teens in public service. Flexible, nimble, adaptable, resilient. Go back to March of this year. At that point, TIPS was running full throttle. We were planning, we were interviewing, we were hiring and getting ready for a big season. And then the whole world changed. I'm exceptionally proud of our staff and the support that they got from our board to re-envision the entire program given these changed circumstances. I can only report that it was a huge success. To our amazement, internally, we may describe this as one of our best years ever. The work was really needed and we produced really well. In normal times, I would be looking out at this number of tables and saying to you, gosh, I hope you enjoy this terrific room and you just had this wonderful meal. And the best part of it is it was all paid for by our sponsors. Obviously, this year is a little bit different. One might expect that the sponsors would back off a little bit when they don't have a lunch to buy. But in fact, they all stepped up. So the sponsors have continued to support TIPS, and I want to thank them. Because of the format that we're using today, I don't have to read to you a long list of our sponsors, but rather I will have the ability for you to see the sponsors' names come up as you participate today. And I do want to remind you, if you know anybody at these sponsors or if you do business with any of these businesses, please thank them for supporting TIPS. There are a couple of high-tier sponsors that I want to thank specifically. Two of the best law firms in Seattle are DLA Piper and Perkins Coie. They are both return sponsors this year, and we really appreciate it. I know both firms well, and I know that some of the smartest people I have ever met work there. So I have suggested a tagline for TIPS that really smart people support TIPS. I'll bring this up at the next board meeting, and everybody will politely say, yes, Joe, that's a good idea. And then it will get put away where it probably belongs. But nonetheless, I do want to thank those two firms for their support. And I would be remiss to not mention Amazon. Amazon got me through my shelter in place by delivering food when we needed it. And I think they're one of the finest companies operating anywhere in the world. They have supported us not only with their resources, but they have allowed one of their executives, Mark Hoffman, to serve on our board of directors. And Mark is an outstanding director, and that contribution has been as important as anything Amazon has done. I also want to thank Pat and Shannon Cahill, who have been consistent, very high-level supporters of Teens in Public Service. And this year was no exception. So thank you, Pat and Shannon. I want to thank all of you for coming today. And I want to close by reflecting a little bit. I want to enunciate a hope which I think is on all of our minds. We hope that 2021 represents a return to normalcy in many of the things that we do. Every year when we have this celebration, we celebrate the teens that we served this year by giving them jobs. But we always remember the many, many fully qualified young people who we don't give jobs to, primarily because of a lack of resources. This year, that was exacerbated by the changed circumstance. I expect those circumstances will get better next year, but we will still be facing the need for resources. So I ask you to continue to support TIPS financially and in every other way, and I thank you both in advance and in arrears for that support.
TIPS ensured that teens were able to help their community through a virtual internship program. We learned so much from this experience and provided our strength in numbers. You can especially see the passion that each intern brings because of the change that they were willing to do when it comes to virtual accommodations. To especially highlight this, we would like to show a short video of 2020 intern Novia Louis, who shares her story on how she helped her nonprofit pivot to reach a global network in her internship this summer.
Sharing My Internship Story by Novia Liu. 3,691 miles separate the San Miguel Escobar district of Guatemala from Seattle, Washington. This distance is formidable, yet with 2 plane flights and a car ride, you can cover it within a day. But how do you span 3,691 miles in a world without travel? I started my internship with Global Visionaries with this question in mind. knowing I was entering a nonprofit based around immersion in the midst of a global pandemic. How would we navigate this, and what makes travel so impactful in the first place? The term global citizen is thrown around quite often these days. We go through great lengths to achieve it, registering for long-haul trips where we hope to see pretty sights and perhaps aid in a project or two along the way. Global Visionaries is different from the one-off immersion trips you, like me, may have imagined. It's not merely checking off a travel box. Through GV's first-year program, a deliberately diverse group of young leaders learn firstly to understand and then to address both global and local inequities. Led by fellow youth, these cohorts participate in local community service and a series of workshops before their 2-week immersion to Guatemala. With GV, travel is not about going to save a nation in the global south. Projects must benefit the local community and come from local need. Throughout my internship, the staff and I dedicated several meetings to picking apart the ethics of immersions. The community dictates the projects, knowing what is actually needed, and it is the students that return having learned from them. I never thought of travel this way. But again, what do you do when all travel is suddenly put to a halt? This summer, I had the honor of working with GV staff in creating programs that continue to serve both our Seattle and San Miguel communities online. We hosted virtual Spanish classes between Seattle high schoolers and Guatemalan teachers. We started a mindful travel book discussion group, the curriculum for which I helped write, to discuss the emotions that come with travel in a fundamentally unequal world. We brainstormed a virtual curriculum for next year, complete with volunteering opportunities, Guatemalan staff workshops, and global pen pals. We found a way to span 3,691 miles. We live in a world of great uncertainty and inequity, facts that are hard to process, let alone address. Yet, through my internship with Global Visionaries, I have been set on a path to navigate our global differences and relish in our similarities.
In Novia's story, we can see how one intern had an ineffable impact on their internship this summer. Now imagine what a whole cohort of interns can do. Maureen Brotherton and her daughter, Tia, founded Teens in Public Service more than 20 years ago with the vision of allowing students to have a practical work experience, an understanding of ethical leadership, and allowing a venue for them to express their values. Since then, we have had nearly 1,200 individuals participate in a TIPS-funded program. To hear her remarks, we will be listening to Maureen about how she has seen this vision pan out from TIPS over time.
Good afternoon. I'm Maureen Brotherton, co-founder of TIPS, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about the history of Teens in Public Service. The seed for the TIPS program started with our oldest daughter, Tia, who volunteered at an elementary school program tutoring homeless children. She loved the work and became such an integral support to the program's manager that the program wanted to find funding to hire her. When funds weren't available, Tia informed us that she was going to stop volunteering and plan to take a paid job to earn money over the summer for school. Her father and I decided to place Tia on our company's payroll and pay her minimum wage to work at Atlantic Street Center at no cost to the nonprofit. It worked so well for Tia, who learned a lot and loved her work and filled a need at the organization. So in essence, we loaned them one of our employees. Then a few years later, Tia and I decided to start TIPS and provide that opportunity for other teens who couldn't do what she did. We knew the impact that it could have, connecting high school teens with community service and making a difference in their community. In 1997, we launched our pilot program with 11 teens serving 7 charities. Today, we have 1,100 TIPS alums and have served over 200 nonprofits. We literally went out and knocked on doors of nonprofits where I felt a community service internship might be rewarding and eye-opening to the teens who would help fill a workforce gap at no cost to their organization. I explained when I visited that TIPS was different than other programs, in that we interview and select the teens who are dedicated and reliable. The response was fantastic. The impact was evident from our pilot program 24 years ago. Ultimately, through partnerships of nonprofits and TIPS, our goal was to produce future leaders who will know how to lead and will be in touch with the needs and the struggles in their communities. Today's theme, Empowering Resilient Leaders, was spawned by the TIPS vision. Some people ask, do you have proof that TIPS works? Well, the proof is in the teens that we served. Today, we have 1,100 past interns, and we've placed them in over 200 nonprofits. I've experienced the impact in so many ways from the very beginning. During our first year, I gained an interview with the newspaper reporter. During the interview, I received a call. And being a one-man office, I had to answer the call, so I paused the interview with the reporter sitting there. It just happened to be a parent of a 15-year-old boy who wanted to thank TIPS for providing them with a son who was happy to get up and go to work on time every day that summer while his friends were sleeping in. Another initial reaction from a nonprofit serving at-risk youth was that it was so nice to have a role model from their neighborhood for the at-risk kids who often didn't have that type of role model in their lives. I received an email once also from a parent, which surprised me because it was from a parent of a student in a special needs camp for the summer. She wanted to thank us for providing a one-on-one relationship with our TIPS intern at that camp so that their child could thrive. I received an email long after a young man's internship that he just wanted to thank TIPS, not that he had become a social worker. He appreciated the service learning aspect, but he wanted to thank us for giving him the opportunity to be on both sides of the interview table. He was interviewed as a TIPS intern to get the job, and then he participated in interviewing teens that were applying to Teens in Public Service. Nonprofits have hired their interns. Our interns have become supervisors to new TIPS interns and even starting their own nonprofits, such as Hugs for Ghana, Tibetan Youth Organization, an orphanage in Vietnam. It goes on and on. It's rewarding to hear from nonprofits from the get-go. Many told me that their interns visit and still volunteer with them, or that they were able to fill an unexpected vacancy in their organization because they had a TIPS intern. But when we hold the celebration of service at the close of each summer, that's when I know that TIPS works. Hearing from the teens directly what their work meant to them reinforces my belief in TIPS, and I see hope in the future with our teen leaders. Our vision in 1997 was to create caring and compassionate leaders for tomorrow. My dream was one day to have a TIPS alum come back and run Teens in Public Service, and we found one. I'm so happy and proud to have Camille Renaud as our TIPS Executive Director. This summer was going to be a tough challenge, no hands-on experiences. I wasn't sure that we would even proceed. When we decided to do a smaller group of interns and have them work remotely, I was not certain it would work for the nonprofit or provide the experience for the teens. But the testimonials from the nonprofits have been tremendous, and the teens evidently once again were stellar, as were our nonprofit partners. Thanks to our amazing TIPS team with their oversight and quality control for both nonprofits and interns' work experiences, TIPS remains strong. TIPS is a gift that keeps on giving. Thank you.
Because of my TIPS internship, I learned that determination and patience are really important leadership qualities to have when it comes to helping others. You have to really be willing to understand and listen to whatever audience it is that you're working with in order to find the best possible way for the both of you to improve. You may be wondering how I became empowered enough to lead my nonprofit throughout a virtual internship, or even what change a cohort of interns can bring during a pandemic. So let's take a look at what my fellow interns have to say about this manner and what opportunities were given to them during this summer.
TIPS, Audrey Wilkinson, Mark.
What is TIPS?
What is TIPS? Yeah, I think to me,
That's a really good question, actually.
TIPS is an organization that connects teens in our community who want to be better leaders to other organizations that have similar goals in mind that they want to see happen in their community.
I would just add one word at the beginning and I would say empowering teens in public service.
Pretty quotable, huh?
Yeah, pretty good.
Tips for me has been an amazing educational experience. I've learned so much about the arts and community service and nonprofit sector.
It really did affect my confidence in a really positive way and make me see the world as a more positive place that's capable of change. And those are things that I will not soon forget.
Tips, Konolu, Mark.
I think one really good thing that came out of the virtual nature of this internship was getting to do a lot more open-ended projects in addition to just facilitating that program.
When you're at home, it's a little different. There's nobody there to, motivate you. So it has to come from you. The fact that TIPS was online this year actually, I think, brought that skill out of me.
I like to be a busybody, so I don't really like to sit and just wait for things to happen. So I got to learn how to creative ways to kind of get work. And so when we did have those Zoom calls, I would kind of present my ideas to her, and then she would also give me work on top of that. So I think that created a really good balance.
One thing that I did for my first week of my internship was I got to have a 30-minute Zoom meeting with all of the other employees of the Holocaust Center, which was awesome. And then from there, I got to sit in on staff meetings.
So I feel like at least at my internship, I had a really solid community of people who listened to me. I never feel like I've really been listened to before. My ideas haven't been quite as nearly considered as seriously as an adult. And so when I was in those meetings and those education meetings, people would listen to my ideas and they'd be like, that's a good idea, we need to work on that, And I really never really had that happen to me before, because I've always thought of myself as a kid who didn't really have that much of an impact on the world. But after this, I feel like TIPS really puts us into places where our ideas are heard.
So I think TIPS does really well to empower young people's voices, both through the organizations they find and the people that they interact with, and by bringing in organizations that are so willing and receptive to young voices. And I think that by doing that and elevating young voices, they're empowering young leaders in the future.
In those group collaboration settings, I think each of us were the leaders at some point, and we all fostered the sense of drive to complete a lot of our goals. So reflecting on this team read experience, I think truly I was empowered by TIPS to be a resilient leader at Team Read.
I think that it was kind of, in the beginning, I was a little nervous to present new ideas and things like that. But then towards the end, I was kind of taking that leadership role of, I can create work for myself, I can bring something to this program. So that was something that I really enjoyed.
On the day of celebration of service, they asked us to choose one word of what a leader was. And for me, that was problem solver, because I feel like a leader has to not only be able to identify a problem, they also have to be willing to be resilient and to be able to get in there and solve a problem. And so I really feel like TIPS gave us those resources to actually look at our organization from new eyes and be like, that's an issue, I have to go in there and solve it. So I do really feel like TIPS gave us those resources to be better leaders.
You can take the culture of your community and you can expand that to the whole world. So I want to be involved in my community in the future. I want to take the best parts of my community and I want to grow them, and I want to expand them to other communities and to the world.
I think it's difficult to see maybe sometimes the ways that you can be of service, and I think that can be discouraging to a lot of people. But I think once you realize the ways that you can help and you see the people that would benefit from it, I think it's hard to not want to give that.
I think that if we close ourselves off to just focusing on ourselves and what's impacting us, I think that leaves a lot of people out. And I know that, especially being a Black woman, that there's a lot of people who don't have as much privilege as I have, even though I am a Black woman. So I think that it's really important to focus on helping other people become great as well, because there's a lot of people that, like, even right now we don't know about, who could have the potential to kind of change the world.
I think that all you really need is wanting to do it. I think all you need is the idea and the motivation and the want to pursue change in your community. And it's way more of an emotional mindset than it is a literal qualification. So anyone can find their place of that criteria. Anyone can obtain that. You really don't need a lot to make a difference. You just need your own mindset.
We live in a world where we have lots of passion right now, like with the internet, and a lot of times we don't have places to put that, but organizations like TIPS really give that opportunity to kind of channel your passion, channel all of those ideas into an actual project, an actual work, where on top of all that, you're getting paid. So I just think that it's truly kind of a unique experience that I've gotten to have, and I think that everybody, if it ever could happen, I think everybody should get to do this, because it's really, really cool.
I think it's very important. I think that to do community service and to see the impact that you've had on your community is very, very important, because I think that for teens that have done this and for teens who have seen the impact they've made and to see the positive effects that they've had, they feel good. They feel like this is an important thing, and it is an important thing. Right now, I feel like the world is, it's a little bit falling apart. But I feel like us, the future generation, if we do work like this, especially now, we'll see how important it is, and then we'll go into our lives having that mindset of trying to make the world a better place.
Teens are often given a different set of expectations than that of adults, when in reality, we can be just as committed and inspired to be working in our communities, and can provide new insight as youth when it comes to creating change. The opportunity of working at a nonprofit means so much to me when I consider what I want to do in my future. I'm very passionate in advocacy for low-income students and students of color. My goal is to help eliminate the systemic and social barriers that can be encountered when it comes to this. But of course, all leaders have to start somewhere. With this in mind, I would like to introduce Jordan Sullivan, a TIPS alumni and a recent board member, who attributes a lot of his leadership development to working at a TIPS internship.
Hello everyone. I hope you're enjoying the program as much as I am. I never get tired of hearing about the tremendous impact that each one of these interns has each year, thanks to the support that we receive by all of you. I'm Jordan Sullivan, a TIPS alumni and current board member. It was 2006 when I did my internship with TIPS, and I was a freshman in high school. The experience was invaluable. It really opened my eyes to the sort of impact that people could have on each other. As a teenager, sometimes it feels like you can only do so much. TIPS breaks down that barrier and allows those who want to do more to really reach their potential. I felt truly honored to be working with a nonprofit in my community. I went on to volunteer on the TIPS selection committee after my internship, and because of my TIPS experience, I also went on to volunteer for the Washington Winter Special Olympics as a coach. That value of service has never left me, and that's why I decided I wanted to join the TIPS board. I wanted to do my part to ensure that this great organization could continue doing its tremendously important work in my community. Now the TIPS staff, Camille, Maddie, Jillian, and all of this past summer's interns deserve a standing ovation. They really do. In spite of the current pandemic, they were agile, they adapted, and they ensured that public service would not be halted. We're going to keep that mindset and that momentum. I can't wait to see all of the creative, incredible ways that next year's interns continue to give back to the community in this time of crisis. Now more than ever is when our nonprofit partners need support. We're asking you to help us in this time of need. We need your support so we can continue to support these interns in making a difference in essential nonprofits in our region. Right now in the chat, we're sharing a link for you to donate. Please remember that your donation does wonders for your community. Donations allow us to pay interns to work for nonprofits at no cost to the nonprofits themselves. It is truly a dual impact donation. Each intern gets to have an experience that will change them for the rest of their lives, and each nonprofit gets the support that they desperately need. I don't know about you, but I've never heard of a nonprofit with too much of anything. Resources, capital, time, anything. These interns are cherished by each and every one of the nonprofits that we work with. So please, take a few seconds, click on the link in the chat, and give back to your community while empowering these resilient leaders. You can select a fundraising team to donate under if you know any of the team captains, or you can donate to the TIPS General Fundraising Team. With your donation, you're enabling these teens to opt out of a traditional summer job and opt in to working with a nonprofit, an experience that has proven inexplicably valuable for both parties. There are dozens of nonprofits that we work with, and your donation empowers them all. It is in times like these when we need community most. Thank you so much to our donors. You make it so that we can keep supporting our community's valuable nonprofits and fostering compassionate, emotionally intelligent, well-rounded young people. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jordan. It's really inspiring to hear the story of another TIPS alumni. As Jordan mentioned, you can always use the link in the chat below, or you can go into the video description to continue to support TIPS. The added benefit of your donation is that it provides the much needed staffing to each one of TIPS nonprofit partners. So let's hear from one of these nonprofit partners now.
Camp Kindness Counts is so grateful to have partnered with TIPS the past 5 years. This year in particular has been extremely difficult when COVID hit. All of our programming had to stop, and many of our staff and volunteers were unable to support us anymore. And so when TIPS reached out and said that we would have 2 teen interns working with us this summer, we felt truly blessed. These interns were so dedicated, they were so enthusiastic, innovative, and perseverant. And it's because of them that we were able to launch online virtual camps for the first time and explore different subject matter, such as social justice, which is something that was really important to us as well as the teens. And we were able to continue the development of one of our most important initiatives, Kind World Explorers, a resource for parents and educators to support children in their social emotional well-being. So at a time like this, when it's so challenging, when it's hard to get on day to day, we are able to impact children, families, and educators near and far because of the support of TIPS and the interns. So thank you so much for your support and partnership.
As you can see, in just a short amount of time, a TIPS intern can have a huge impact on their communities through their nonprofits. Before we wrap up, I would like to hand off to Camille Renaud, the TIPS Executive Director, to share more about how you can continue to be involved with TIPS.
Thank you for joining us today. Going into my second year as Executive Director of Teens in Public Service, we had big plans for growth. Instead, we were faced with a different set of challenges brought on by the pandemic. It wasn't easy, but with the support of our staff and board, we were able to adapt our program and provide remote internships to a cohort of amazing teens that wanted to make a difference in their community. One of the highlights of the summer was getting to know these wonderful students and seeing their resourcefulness, compassion, and resiliency in action. During our virtual site visits with nonprofits, I got to hear directly from supervisors about the impact their intern had at their organization. I heard about one intern who took on a project that another staff member said was impossible and executed it flawlessly. Another intern started a fundraising drive when he heard a staff member was using money out of her own pocket to buy arts and craft supplies for their elderly clients. And these are just 2 examples of many that demonstrate the value that TIPS interns have from the community. While we are not able to hold our annual fundraising event in person this year, we still need your help
to give teens the opportunity to work at nonprofits where their help is needed most. This summer proved that we can adapt to challenges and that our program remains a vital resource to nonprofits in the Seattle area as one of the only programs that pays teens for their service. Any amount you can give will enable us to continue providing meaningful work experiences to teens serving our community. It will help us empower resilient leaders for years to come. We could not achieve our mission without the support of our staff, board members, corporate sponsors, donors, alumni, nonprofit partners, and volunteers. If you are interested in supporting TIPS by joining our board, serving on the selection committee, or volunteering in other ways, please fill out the sign-up form on our website at teensinpublicservice.org/empower. I hope that, like me, you are inspired by the stories you've heard from this year's interns. With these students as emerging leaders, I am hopeful for the future and that we can build a stronger, more compassionate community together.
Overcoming the unforeseen obstacles of COVID-19 required lots of confidence, determination, and commitment. For this, I would like to thank the TIPS staff who still allowed for this opportunity to be given for interns over this summer. I hope you feel empowered by listening to the work of my peers and me. Together, we can work to make an incredible community that benefits those that need it the most. If you'd like to hear more about the stories of interns working in nonprofits during COVID-19, you're welcome to attend a live session. The link is provided in the Zoom chat below. See you there. Bye.